Hello and welcome back to the next YouTube. So the next YouTube was staying on building muscle. This is going to go more into about the training side of things. So here obviously I've wrote the main factors needed to build muscle, right? So we know that factor number one is calories. Yeah? We kind of went through that in the last one. So we're not going to go through that. The second one is weight training or weightlifting or adequate amount of stimulus through resistance training, right? So weight training, that's kind of what we're going to go through today, right? So we need both of these two. We need adequate amount of calories, maintenance or in a surplus. Can build a little bit of muscle in a deficit as we've gone through, but to build a substantial amount of muscle tissue or a decent amount of muscle tissue, we probably need to be at maintenance or in a surplus. But weight training is more important, in my opinion, than calories. Why? Right, because anyone can eat more food. Anyone can eat sufficient amount of protein, adequate amount of carbs, adequate amount of fats, and have it good quality food. Anyone can do that, can't they? Not everyone has the mental space or mental headspace to push weight training as much as it needs to be pushed. So we need to do two things when we're weight training, right? So actually we'll say three. Right, so number one is follow a structured training program over a longer period of time. Right, so structured training program. So we need to follow a structured training program for a long period of time. And the main reason for that is because if we're chopping and changing exercises every week and we're not trying to progressively overload and we don't know whether we're getting stronger, you ain't going to grow any muscle. Shocking the muscle is a load of shite, yeah? You're not shocking anything apart from the amount of, or the lack of muscle that you're putting on. That'll be a shock, right? So you need to follow a structured training program and aim to get progressively stronger on it, right? So that's number one. And you want to follow a training program, I would set an absolute minimum of 16 weeks. And aim to get very strong on the exercises within that training program. Dependent on the training program split, etc., honestly, doesn't matter too much. Like, that's an it depends answer. There's no right or wrong. Yeah, what matters the most is what I'm going to go through. So you'll have all heard this, that you need to progressively overload, which basically means get a little bit stronger than last week. Yeah, so we want to make sure we're following progressive overload. Which is the main point, right? If you're not getting a little bit stronger compared to last week, you ain't going to grow no muscle, right? But just like I said with calories, anyone can eat more food. Anyone can get a little bit stronger each week if they're not pushing as hard as they need to. So for example, say if you're doing any type of squatting movement and you squat down, you get 10 reps at a given weight, but on that 10th rep, your rep speed's the same and it doesn't slow down and it starts burning a little bit, so you just rack it up and you're like, oh, that was enough. It wasn't enough, yeah? Because the next week you'll be able to get stronger because you didn't push yourself hard enough that week before. So you've got to make sure that, yes, you're progressively overloading, but with progressive overload, you've got to push towards, spelt towards wrong, failure. That is the single most biggest point. Because like I said, anyone can get a little bit stronger if they're not pushing towards failure. If you're pushing towards failure, it'll be harder to get stronger. That's the key though. It's got to be hard to get strong. And you've got to push through mentally through them little sticking points where you're not just going until it starts burning. You're not just going until it hurts. It's meant to fucking hurt, yeah? Obviously, when I say hurt, I mean in your muscle, not in like in your joints. But if it's burning and it's hurting in your muscle, that's what you're looking for. So pushing towards failure, right? But what I see time and time again, when people start pushing towards failure, what starts to suffer is the range of movement. I'll just put ROM for range of movement, right? So your range of movement, like for example, let's say in a squat, where ideally in a squat, you want to get down to where your knee is at a 90-degree angle, don't you? Some people can get further down, that's fine. But you want to ideally get where your knee's at a 90-degree angle, so your bum is parallel to the floor, right? When people start progressively overloading and slowly start inching up load and they start getting a little bit stronger, range of movement suffers. So what at a given weight they squatted down to 90, they go a little bit heavier and they don't squat down as far. Then they don't squat down as far. So what happens, what that means is basically the muscle you're trying to target can't take the load, because when you're at the bottom of a squat, you're in your weakest position. You're not in the strongest part of that movement. It's its weakest part, right? So it's its hardest part. The body has to work harder to get out the bottom part of a squat, and it gets easier as you get towards the top, yeah? So that's why range of movement suffers, because in our lengthened ranges, that's where it's hard. And that's where we have to push past that point. We have to get full range of movement every rep. And if you're not getting full range of movement when you're going up load, you need to regress and go back down load. But what I see too many times from males, especially because they want to get stronger and they want to get really strong, is the range of movement's absolutely shocking. So they'll put loads of weight on and they'll literally quarter squat, or they'll literally do a shoulder press like this, and it's doing absolutely nothing for you. That is not going to grow any amount of muscle. So what you want to do in order to help this is every time you go up weight, yeah, you want to film your set when you're going up load, and you want to see whether your form is standardized. So what I mean by that is, are you getting full range of movement throughout every repetition that you're doing in that given set? Because if you are, brilliant, spot on. But if you're not, and like from rep one, your form is absolutely atrocious and your range of movement is piss poor, your body or the muscle can't take the amount of weight you've put on, right? So in terms of like a progression model, I would ideally only want anyone to go up by 2.5 kg total every time they increase load. So for example, say if we're on a squat and we do a 100 kg squat and we do it times 15 reps and then we do it times 12 reps, the next week on set one, I just want you to do 102.5 kg and get however many reps you can. And then your second set, you'd probably drop back down to 100 kg and you'd just try and get 13 reps. So that's how you just slowly increment up. Because remember, progressive overload is getting a little bit stronger than last week. And literally to get a little bit stronger than last week, you only need to do the same weight that you've lifted last week, but by one more rep. As long as you're pushing towards this failure point. That is super important, yeah? So, all in all, in a nutshell, to build muscle, you need to train properly. You need to follow a structured training program for 16 weeks minimum, and you need to try and get a little bit stronger on every exercise that you're doing by progressively overloading. To progressively overload, you just need to go up by either one more rep at the same load you did last week, or if you're at the end of your rep range, go up by 2.5 kg total weight, yeah, and then aim to push towards that failure point. Every single set that you do in the gym, when you're trying to build muscle, you've got to push towards that failure point, but you've also got to standardize your form and make sure your range of movement is all the way down and all the way up, or all the way forward and all the way back, if you're doing a row, for example. So obviously with one-to-one coaching, this is what we help people do. We analyze training videos, we analyse form, we analyse execution, we analyse range of movement, we analyse people's training logbooks, so we can see how they're performing, how they're executing, whether they're pushing to failure, and whether they're progressing properly and they're just inching up load as opposed to making 2 big jumps each week. Yeah? So you'll probably have guessed you need to track your training, and you should be filming some sets of your training as well if you really want to build some muscle. Yeah? And that's how we build muscle when it comes to training. So remember that calories are important, but if you train like a fucking pussy, then you will not grow any muscle, unfortunately. So that's everything for this week. Any questions or comments, drop them in the box below. Do have a free ebook in the comments below that'll help you build some muscle. So download that, have a look at that. Ask me any questions, ask them in the comments below or on Instagram. I'm happy to help. But thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you all soon.